So welcome to the Indiaspora G20 Forum. My name is M.R. Rangaswamy, and I had the opportunity to start this in 2012, 11 years ago. And it's gratifying for me as a founder to see the progress that our community has made throughout the world. So as you know, India is the G20 president. There have been hundreds of events around this, and we're privileged to be part of the G20 presidency of India and to host this event in New Delhi. And we started this as a US-India organization years ago, but now we're proud to announce tonight we have 26 countries that the diaspora represent here in the room. 26. So for those of you from different countries, your flags are all out there. Take pictures, post on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any kind of social media. And tell all your friends in your countries about this. So 26 countries, we're full house, and tonight, we thought the biggest contingent, we said the biggest contingent gets the opening speech. So of course, the US is the biggest contingent to the G20, okay? So for those of you from the US, you have your ambassador here as the opening speaker. So I got to meet Ambassador Eric Garcetti when he was going through the confirmation process, and immediately I said, he is the right person for the job. He's smart, he's a Rhodes Scholar. We won't hold that against you though. But he was a mayor of the second largest city in the United States, Los Angeles. He was also the chair of the C40, which is this large group of mayors, global mayors who convene their different cities together. Did a lot of great work there. He's also a big climate change activist, but one thing that he did was brilliant, I thought, was to bring the Olympics back to Los Angeles in 2028, right? And I hope I get tickets. I hope I get some tickets. But let me tell you this. I think we should second the ambassador to lobby on behalf of India to get the Olympics in 2032. 36. 32 is Australia. Damn. So 36, we got to get Olympics to India before it turns 100. And I think the ambassador can help us. So without further ado, the ambassador of the United States to India, Eric Garcetti.
Thank you so much, MR. And by the way, he said a line that didn't get applause. So he founded Indiaspora. So give him a round of applause for what you have built, what you have created. It, I hope, gives you as warm a feeling as I know all of us feel here tonight to see these connections. Because in life, you can brag about the things you've done by yourself, but it's limited what any of us can do as individuals. But what we can do by connecting one another and that exponential connections that come from that. I had a dear friend, she's actually part of the Indian diaspora. She's a professor at Georgetown University, godfather to my daughter. Her husband's from India. And she said one day, all the people that are important in my life these days, Eric, you introduced me to. And it was the best compliment that somebody can pay you. And she said, you were never jealous that we became close friends, sometimes even closer than the time we can spend together. And I think, MR, you and your fellow builders of the Indiaspora have been able to really be visionaries. You see, I'm part of diasporas as well. I am half Mexican and half Jewish. So my mother's side of the family fled war in the then Russian Empire when Jews were being taken out of their villages in pogroms and being kicked out of their homes and sometimes killed. Part of a Jewish diaspora that settled the world and did amazing things. My father is Mexican-American, and his grandfather was born during the Mexican Revolution when my great-grandfather was killed, and my great-grandmother carried him over the border as a baby. And so when we talk about dreamers and border crossers, it's personal for me, that courage that they had to be part of what's now a Mexican diaspora. And now having moved to Delhi, I'm part of the American diaspora. And to me, it is in some ways the best thing that you can have in life is being comfortable crossing borders, navigating between places. You see, our human instincts are so often we want to classify one another. You're part of this culture, this religion, this nationality, this group, when in reality, we are part of concentric circles. I always love, we have a couple people here from, where's my friend from Orange County? There you are. And you said Los Angeles, because it's true. Sometimes you might say Orange County, and if you're far enough away, people say, where's that? So you say LA. But then when you're in LA, you say the particular part of Los Angeles. And then from that neighborhood, you might say this street, this block. We have multiple identities. And part of what's missing in this world right now are those people with the courage to cross borders and to translate between, to live in that in-between. And Indiaspora is just that, one of the great and necessary bodies to translate and to interpret this moment. So I have an amazing speech that's here that I'm, thank you, Nicole, who's here, and the entire communications team. Where's Nicole? It's somewhere, there she is. I work with nearly 3,000 talented American and Indians who make this probably the second largest mission now in the world of the United States, and traditionally what has been the largest mission of any two countries together. But I want to speak a little bit just from the heart. I'll make sure I hit the main points. But because this is a moment in which somebody asked me recently, how would you define the US-India relationship? I'd say this is a moment in which India is trying to figure out who she is in the world. It's also a moment when America is trying to figure out who we are in the world. And then, to complicate it even more, the US and India are trying to figure out who we are together in the world. You see, we've always had very deep friendship. You go back now multiple generations. In fact, you have to start way back when. Even the independence of India was aided by Roosevelt going to Churchill and saying this was a necessity. I know we screwed up some years in between, but at the very beginning, and even throughout those years when we weren't necessarily strategic partners, whether it was in the agricultural revolution and food aid, whether it was the people-to-people ties as universities came here and helped found and strengthen institutions here, as people came from India to strengthen my country, even in the face of the sort of discrimination that my ancestors faced. In fact, at our National Day this year, I spoke about the first elected Asian American member of Congress, Dalip Singh Sandh, who came to America, went to Berkeley, got his PhD, but because Indians were discriminated against, couldn't apply that PhD and use it. So instead, he went into agriculture in Southern California, in the Inland Empire, and got elected in the 1950s, 1956, as the very first Asian American to be a member of Congress, strengthening our state, our country, and our collective history. We see these moments where we can define history. And if you ask, what does history feel like to live through? It feels like this. This room, this moment, this place, this time is a historic moment. You'll look back on tonight. You'll look back on this visit to Delhi. You look back on this year between the United States and India. And by the way, India in the world as well, for all of our friends from other countries that are here. And this is a defining year. A year in which India finally remembers and reaches back, and also proudly looks forward to what is possible, as well as drawing from what has been. And that's a well that I've drawn from in my own life. In 1985, as a 14-year-old, my parents brought me and my 16-year-old sister here to Delhi for the first time. They had met while they were both junior employees at Pan Am Airlines, and even as they went up in life, they took my sister and I all around the world, never on vacations, but on trips, to learn. And in Varanasi and Ellora and Ajanta, I learned about the ancient history and culture and religions and traditions of India. Some 4 years later, I arrived at college, and we all get a random roommate assigned to us by a lottery. It was a kid named Jared Clark, and we hit it off. We became close friends. And about halfway through the year, he said, Eric, my dad, he works for the State Department, and they just made him ambassador to India from the United States of America. You want to go to India? And I still get chills telling the story. I said, of course, I loved my first trip to India. I want to go back. And I came here, and I slept in Roosevelt House, the ambassador's residence. I spent time in the embassy, traveled the country again, came back to New York City where I was going to school and started studying Hindi and Urdu, reading the Vedas, all the history and the religion, the culture of India. Thought I'd come back my junior year to live in Bodh Gaya and do a Buddhist studies program, but politics got in the way. I got elected to student council, and I said I promised I'd serve, so my India dream kind of died, or so I thought. But the universe has a curious way of connecting people and dreams. And now suddenly I'm living that dream here when President Biden asked me to consider serving here. And he told me, when he asked me to come serve here, he said, this is the most important country in the world to me. I think something that no American president has ever uttered in the history of our two countries. I thought it was just Joe Biden, and he tells the candidate for ambassador to Liechtenstein, Liechtenstein's the most important country in the world, but he actually meant it because I heard him say it to the prime minister during the state visit. So this is a moment which even, I see Atul is here, who's spent time as chief of mission as well, and you've witnessed this history in multiple times coming here, that even friends of mine who were here 5 and 6 and 7 years ago say, even then when we thought this was new heights, never have we achieved, they can't believe what it's like here today. In the first 5 months of my time as ambassador, we'll have had a state visit, and those of you who follow diplomacy know if you can get 2 or 3 agreements out of a state visit, that's pretty successful. We had 131 different things that we were talking, from technology to trade, from the environment to women's empowerment, from small businesses to space. We used to say the sky's the limit, but now that we're working together in space, not even the sky is the limit. From the seabed to the heavens, the US and India are a force for good and a powerful force to move this world forward. So when you think of the role of the diaspora, certainly in the United States of America, we're 4 million people, about 1% of our population. I know that's a small neighborhood in India, but 4 million people who represent 1% of the population of America are now 6% of the tax base. They are 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs, the old joke which you couldn't succeed if you were Indian as a CEO, now you have to be Indian to be a CEO in America. The investments that are going not just from America into India, but from India into America, the way Indians are strengthening our country and creating jobs in America. The old cliches of this being the back office is now, this is the IP center. From biotech, where yesterday I saw a beautiful incarnation of this relationship where our NIAID, which is one of our research institutes, had 2 breakthroughs on dengue, gave the breakthroughs to 3 Indian companies, and one of them is already ready with all 4 strains of dengue, because it's almost impossible to get a vaccine that works on all 4, is in its phase 3 clinical trials. And India's brilliance of actually putting this together in a way that the United States never could, and America's brilliance at discovering this and sharing it with India, will not only maybe get to a day where dengue doesn't exist here in India, but anywhere in the world. When you see the work that we can do together strategically, whether it's common threats or whether it's deterrence out there, or just quite simply to make sure that 2 democracies have a vision on things like technology. We have one vision out there in the world that technology should oppress, can divide, and confuse. We have a vision as democracies that technology should connect, detect, respect us, and figure out a way that we can, at the end of the day, use that as a force for good, from artificial intelligence to quantum computing, from biotech to energy tech. This is that moment. But as much as government likes to brag about itself, government is very small compared to people. And so that's why I'm so committed to not only being with a group like you all tonight, but using the limited time I have here representing my country in India to strengthen the bridge from America to India. Because Indians and India, thanks to many members of the diaspora, know America and Americans so much better than vice versa. I'm just being honest. Most Americans know a little bit of Northern Indian cooking, have an idea of some tech stuff here, know that there's some issues with maybe common strategic threats we face. But other than that, can't really string a paragraph together about India unless they visited here. More American students at the university level studied in Costa Rica than in India in recent years, which says a lot about Costa Rica. We all would love to study if we were 20 years old in Costa Rica. But we need a generation of Indianists who know the languages, the cultures, the traditions. And India has to prepare itself for America, because Americans coming here want very different things than Indians coming to America. Indians from India are coming to America to study STEM, to invest in finance. Americans are interested in health and wellness and history, in other things that can bring together our nations. Our higher education is ready to come together in a way that we simply couldn't, partially because of rules here in India and partially because of hesitance in America. But everybody, whether it's business, higher education, government in America now wants to know India. India is the center of the universe, and the India-American relationship, as I said, is not only a force for good, but a force for positive change in a world that badly needs it. So I want to hear your questions, and I promised my daughter is here. My wife's coming hopefully in a few weeks, but I'm a single father, so I promised I'd tuck her into bed. So I know India well enough that I have to lay the ground rules down when I leave. No more pictures, unfortunately. I'm going to get out of here. I appreciated meeting everybody, but I want to actually have some questions before that. So I'm going to use my time, unfortunately not for the interactions after this, but I'd love to hear what's on your mind, what you want to know about what America can do, suggestions, ideas, contributions, and know that this mission here, for those of you that are Americans, are committed to you, the great border crossers, the courageous translators and interpreters of this relationship, to be the co-authors of this moment. And for the rest of the diaspora, we invite you to be a part of that too, because if America and the United States are stronger together, it's stronger for the entire world. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad. So with that, open it up.
Speak up. Oh, hang on.
Oh, there's a microphone right behind you.
So I'm from the U.S. I live in California in the Bay Area.
Best state.
So not exactly Los Angeles.
Not the best part, but you know, you can't be perfect.
You know. So I think, you know, what's always befuddled me, and I think the Quad and all is helping, but what is stopping the US and India from having a deeper relationship? It's so obvious that this is the nexus that needs to get together to, you know, to counter China and Russia and the rest. So what's stopping? I know there's decades of State Department history and stuff, but is that behind us? What's stopping us?
There are no governmental barriers. I've never seen the speed with which agreements are coming together, the way we're leaning in with technologies that sometimes we haven't shared with our closest allies. But I would say this, we are either completely matched in terms of our personalities, or sometimes the opposite. And I don't mean in an inherent way, I think in the cultures of our governments and the way we've related. How are we the same? There's certainly for Californians, it's the warmth of the welcome. It's the way we want to know you and your story. It's the closeness we feel. It's the democratic values that we hold dear. It's our diversity and clinging onto that. It's the struggles we have. It's not easy to be diverse or democratic in both of our countries. There's plenty of challenges that we both have, but it's the least bad way to be in the world. It's much better than being autocratic and monochromatic. But we're also a little bit the opposite. I mean, and those of you who are Indian American know this. Sometimes when Americans get frustrated about negotiating with Indian government, for instance, and we have got dear friends from the Indian government, Indians grow up, and if, you know, this is $9.95 for Americans. That's what it says right there, $9.95. I want to buy this. I want to buy it now. That's exactly what I'm paying. And to somebody who grows up in India, it might be actually 90 cents. It might be $90. Let's start talking. And let's negotiate. And I want to get to know you through negotiations. And are you willing to walk out of the carpet store? Because you're not serious if you're not willing to walk out. And then you finally get to something. And so Americans are impatient. And our impatience sometimes messes up the relationship. Similarly, Indians are very patient, sometimes too patient. If we're going to do the necessary things, for instance, on defense cooperation, we may help India, and we want to help India, have a domestic defense sector that's stronger than ever and closer tied to us. But if we insist on everything going in a certain way, India may jump this much, but we may see other countries jump that much more in the same period of time. So I think part of it is adjusting how we do business. Think about trade. We need to change rules here still. This is the highest taxed economy, major economy in the world. And I say that not because I want to get just American companies in here manufacturing things. I want Indian companies to be manufacturing things. But Indian companies are taxed for the components that come in right now for what they need to assemble until that can be manufactured here locally. So I don't mind saying some of these kind of harder truths, but I do think it's pretty frictionless. And the respect that I have with my colleagues who I negotiate with every single day and across the mission, all of us can't believe it. We've never felt this before. And if anything, we're challenging each other to do more than we ever have before. It's not the old days where like, okay, I grudgingly will do one agreement this year and that's it. And I put a lot of credit to both Joe Biden and to Prime Minister Modi, who are impatient leaders about this relationship and are insisting on results. And as long as they do, and we're working for them, we'll keep producing.
Ambassador, my name is Dilip Sinha.
Yes, Dilip, nice to see you.
I'm not from Bay Area, but my sister does.
Okay.
I didn't study in US, but all my 3 boys did, right from Yale to Carnegie.
Great.
I couldn't go to US to work there, but I worked with American companies like Rockwell, Honeywell.
Yes.
My question is, during the COVID, we realized the big supply chain disruption and the following years, the issues with the US-China relationship, Ukraine, Russia problems. And one thing came out clear that the companies need to diversify their manufacturing base, and India offers the biggest talent, biggest place, and welcoming country.
Right.
What do you think the two governments or governments should do to accelerate that move to manufacture in India? And of course, as you rightly said, it's always mutual for Indian companies to come to US and open up factories there. Thank you.
So it's true, and let me just say something, because there's often, China comes up, and we both want a stable China, and we want peaceful relations with China. We're not trying to gang up against anybody, but the overconcentration, and I'm not speaking just about China anymore, of anything in any one country is just bad for our economy. When we have crises like we experienced during COVID, if the syringes are all made in one place, or the vaccines are all made in one place, or whatever, it's just not good for humanity. And so nobody should look at this as threatening. We should look at it as a mutual thing where we want to stay engaged and involved with all countries, but there's no question that India offers scale unlike almost any other country in the world. I think to get there, we have to be very serious about the goals we want and work backwards. I wasn't too pleased to read a report recently that a lot of the money that's looking to diversify from China, foreign direct investment, that people had expected to come to India really isn't coming to India yet. That was a report that was done by a third party analyzing that. You can't, in India, expect that it's inevitable that money will come here. So to my earlier point, the rules, capitalism is like water. It flows to where the lowest points are. And there's still a lot of barriers here. There's a lot of unpredictability. People aren't sure if the rules are going to change. I'm just speaking these truths because when I speak to CEOs, American CEOs, all of them want to be here more than ever before, but it's kind of one foot in. It's not both feet in yet. Because they want to wait and see. Well, you try it first and see, well, GM couldn't even get their factory out of Mumbai when they failed, but maybe there's no protections. We know we have some good things, but then the rules change overnight on our taxes, or we can't really depend on what the real estate rules are going to be. Those things have to be standardized, and don't just do it for, it's my father, sorry, I'll just have to tell him I'm calling back. Those rules have to change not just for the United States, but for India to succeed. Even if it's no American company that comes here, I want the European companies, the fellow Asian companies to come in here with those rules there. Second is we have to prepare realistically for the other things that are outside of taxation and regulation. And skilling, I think, is one of the most important ones. Where we can, I think, cooperate with India very deeply is on making sure that we have the job skills. For instance, there will not be deep semiconductor factories here beyond packaging and design for 20 years if there's not a workforce. And it's a very difficult workforce to train. This is highly complex work. And so we need to get serious about that if India's aspirations to be a semiconductor manufacturing center are real. We need to empower all people in our economies. Having great discussions with the government of India, and I know the Prime Minister loves the community college model. Said, let's stop talking about just vocational schools here, but that American model of community colleges, which allows people to get skills linked to what industry needs, would be a great system for us to work together and to see if we could strengthen here. And vice versa, I want to bring community college students to India. Right now, we're the lucky ones. And I'm sure there's plenty of stories of people who started out very modestly here. But by definition, being in this room, we're the lucky ones. And the lucky ones are talking to lucky ones. And we're bragging about how IIT grads and MIT grads are getting to know each other. When the bulk of our populations don't know each other, have never met each other, and need to connect with each other, if I think that dream is going to come true.
My name is KP Nair. Ambassador, I'm a columnist. I spend part of my time in DC and part of my time in Delhi.
Oh, back there, sorry. I saw that microphone, but no mouth moving. I was like, you're the best ventriloquist I've ever seen in my life.
All right, okay. Yeah.
Please.
I'm so glad, Ambassador, that you did not talk about India and the US, one being the oldest democracy, one being the largest democracy, because I think one of the problems in our relationship is that in the last 20 years, we got stuck in cliches.
Yes.
We need to get beyond that. And ISET, I think, is an example of the new frontiers that we are trying to explore.
Yes.
Instead of relying on sentimentalism and tradition, you know. I was wondering if you could expand a little on what the future holds, similar to ideas like ISET in terms of what we can create in the relationship, the new frontiers that goes beyond sentiment and tradition.
So I have a rule in the embassy, no acronyms, and I bet most people know what ISET is, but I'm going to say what ISET is for the folks who don't. It's the Initiative on Critical Emerging Technologies, and something that the national security advisors of both of our countries dreamt up less than a year ago. And to see, actually, it was in this room, Jake Sullivan and I were just a couple months ago talking about how far we've come with CEOs and business leaders from India and the United States that were together at the highest of levels. And you're exactly right. We have to go not only beyond cliches, we have to go beyond MOUs, memorandums of understanding. Everybody loves to sign those. Get two leaders together. We promise we're going to get together to talk even more and do even more things instead of actually doing it. Our National Science Foundation director, who is a native of Chennai, Panch was in town today, and he's been here for the last couple of days. He's one of those Indian-American bridges that actually physically exist. And we got together with the PSA, the Principal Science Advisor for Prime Minister Modi, and some of the ministries, and we're actually putting real money out. In fact, we put a call for proposals for research on both sides of the Indo-Pacific, had 136 different proposals, the most in anything we've ever put out before in our lives. So I think it's initiatives like that where we're actually going to do research together, we're going to match-make companies together, and my ambition here in Delhi is to take the mission and to make sure this doesn't depend on any one administration or any two national security advisors, but that we make this embedded and permanent, because it will take 20 years of work for the United States and India to actually get this right, to do the climate crisis and to get green hydrogen, renewable energy storage, carbon sequestration together. It'll take 20 years for us to get quantum, to define what the contours of AI, which the Prime Minister jokingly said is America and India, not just artificial intelligence. The T-shirt, I don't know if you guys saw the T-shirt. I printed that T-shirt and I threw it to the President on the last second. He said, am I supposed to give this to the Prime Minister? I said, sure, why not? And suddenly they were holding it, and it's kind of the new way of looking at how we can define the morality of technology and what it stands for. And then I think lastly, we've got to ask each other some hard questions. We can't expect India to pivot on a dime, turn quickly in terms of its whole strategic outlook. But for the United States to be full in with both of our feet strategically, we've got to have certain assurances that we're in this together for a medium term. I think we are feeling that. I think we are getting there, but that would be my advice, is there has to be that depth of trust. There has to be, I think, that people to people, and we have to embed these as not initiatives of today, but something that 20 years from now people won't remember who worked on something like ISET. They will just remember that it changed the world.
Sorry,
Excellency.
if you can hold on for 1 second, we want some diversity here.
Yeah,
I'd
sure.
like one of our women members to talk.
And I'm gonna have to, why not take the question, I can take maybe 1, 2, 3 or something, and then I have to leave, because I did, as I always say, groups won't remember how long you stayed, but your daughter will remember if you tucked her into bed, so. Exactly. I'll call my dad on the way. So I'll just hear the questions, and then I'll answer them together real quick.
Thank you so much,
Of course.
Ambassador. My name is Nandita Parker,
Nandan.
and so I'm an Indian American. I married an American citizen who's Caucasian 32 years ago,
Right.
and then dragged him back from the US to live in India for the
Yep.
past 18 years. So I ran an India-focused hedge fund. I was really happy to hear about the word seabed in your talk and the environment. Because India has this huge coastline, and there's a lot to be said for the 30 by 30 initiative. And I wanted to ask you realistically what your expectations are in terms of the work that can be done to really achieve the targets of protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030 from an India and US standpoint. And secondly, in terms of seabed mining, which is a really difficult issue, what are your thoughts? And thirdly, since the oceans are important and very important for climate change, and yet they are, as you said, strategically extremely vulnerable from an India standpoint, where do you stand on all of this?
Thank you. I'm not going to do justice to 3 questions, but I'm going to try. Do we have?
2 more. There's a
Two
lady
oth-
here
yep,
and
please.
a gentleman.
Go ahead.
May I?
Yes.
Purnima Voria, National U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce, promoting bilateral trade and investments between United States and India since 2005. Mayor Michael Hancock said he wants to come and see you soon.
Good.
So,
I'd love to see him.
my question to you is on the visa. Right now, I know that when billionaires and trillionaires really want to jump to the other side, they want both the feet, not one feet like our U.S. Citizens. So they want to go to US and get the visa, but it takes 3 months. You know, the businessmen of that stature do not have that time to wait. So what can you do to expedite that if people are going and investing billions in United States, which we do want, what can you do to help us?
Thank you.
And if there is a way out
Yes.
to do that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Excellency, my name is Nalin Kohli. I'm the president of Association of Small and Medium Knowledge Industries. I've been championing the cause for greater cooperation between SMEs and startups in the US with their counterparts in India. So I was very happy to see in this joint declaration there's a specific mention on small businesses. The mechanisms which need to be put in place, you have a CEO forum for the large companies, 16 from the US side and 16 from Indian side. But my request would be that if we can have a similar forum, because there's a huge untapped potential. There are strong SMEs in the US and startups, and their issues about navigating in the economy in India or when the Indian companies go to US are far more difficult. So my request to you would be that if you could expand how this particular point in the joint declaration is going to be taken forward and what can be done to bring this cooperation about.
Great. All right, all in 2 minutes. So let's see. The oceans, like I said, I'm not going to be able to do justice. It is a place of focus for us collectively. I'm not going to speak to the ocean policy for the entire U.S. government, but let me just speak to U.S.-India collaboration. We do take India's lead, and we are ready to follow in the India-Ocean region, whether that comes to conservation work and whether it comes to biodiversity work. Obviously, these are open oceans. We saw even in recent negotiations on fisheries, which are being rapidly depleted in the Indian Ocean. And it's really European countries, so for those of you who are European, please lobby your European governments who are more of the problem than African or Asian countries in the tuna stocks and other things. But we have always said yes to every Indian initiative, and one of the beautiful things about this relationship is instead of acting like the cliche of America, like we're always leading, follow us, we say, when you want us to lead and you want to follow, we're here. We want to do things side by side, which we're doing some things on the ocean. We're ready to lead together. And when you want us to follow you, we're ready to do that too. So I think the Indian Ocean Dialogue is a great example of that, some of the work, the convening that India is leading and that America is participating in as part of the Indo-Pacific, and recognizing humbly, America doesn't touch the Indian Ocean. We have the Indo-Pacific concept, but that doesn't mean that sometimes we need to lead. We have the equipment, we have the military, we have the whatever, but oftentimes it's going to be following the lead of India when it comes to that. Seabed mining, I don't think we have enough time to get into, but I think it's something critically important for us to co-lead together on. I was watching a terrible movie, Meg 2. If you haven't seen Meg 1, go to see Meg 2. It's so bad, it's good. But it's seabed mining of critical minerals on the bottom of the ocean. It made me think about this issue just a couple days ago in Gurgaon. And by the way, there are no cinemas like Indian cinemas. My daughter got to, in the intermission, which of course we don't have it, she's like, why is there an intermission, Dad? And then there's a slide in the theater and a ball pit. She's like, this is the best movie I've ever been to, Dad. But that issue of making sure that we not only have an agreement, but an agreement that is respected. We see nations that do not respect the law of the sea as it is right now. We're seeing that in real time with the Philippines today. We really need to have, a lot of people like to play countries off of each other, mid-sized countries, middle power countries. I think on certain principles we have to come together as a world and isolate those who don't abide by order and have chaos or our way and no other way. And I'll leave it at that. In terms of expediting visas, there is a process. We have very strict laws on this, so we can't favor one person based on wealth or not. But when we think there's something of national interest, business deals, for instance, there is a process to refer to any contact that you have inside embassy or consulate, where we can ask for the consular section to do expedited interviews. We have it's been a strong focus of mine. This is something that the president personally, I don't think a president has ever talked about visas in any country before. President Biden spoke to me about visas and said, speed them up. We've cut from the slowest time, we're now 2/3 faster and 1/3 more visas than pre-pandemic. But as nice as those statistics are, there's still people waiting in certain categories for far too long. Part of that then was building capacity. We announced during the state visit, 2 more consulates will open, Bengaluru and in Ahmedabad. I think that should just be a start for the future, because if you look at the statistics, 10 years from now, we're going to have double the number. It's a tough thing in India. Whenever we reduce the time, more Indians apply, and it goes up. It's like saying, I'm going to absorb the ocean if I just have a big enough sponge, and no matter how big the sponge is, you throw it in there, and you're like, it's waterlogged again. So it's a little bit of a dance, but we have some great things to announce. We will adjudicate a record number of visas this year, and a lot of credit, because we will have doubled probably the number of visas we adjudicate in the last few years without doubling the people, which means people are working twice as hard. Your daughter's getting married this year? See, it all comes down to an Indian wedding in the end. That's a personal question. Yeah, no, of course. So no, we're working on it. There's no quick fix, but we hope to have some good news on H-1B visas coming up. We're going to continue to look at ways that we can extend, expand, and simplify and reduce those times. And then lastly, on small business, I was really excited and worked hard on that. I've been a big fan of small business. I'm the product of 2 small business people, those 2 immigrants that I mentioned. One was a tailor and made suits, and my dad's dad was a barber, and without small businesses, I wouldn't be here today, quite literally. And they embodied for me what the American dream was, and for so many Indians, the Indian dream, which, by the way, this is a new cliche, so it's not an old one to the gentleman who's talking about old cliches. I do think the Indian and American dreams are so similar, and they really are flip sides of the same. I've never felt the American dream so alive as here in India, in what Indians kind of dream of as well. That said, we got the Small Business Administration involved in this, and we're currently looking at building a mechanism to match businesses in both countries. We might start with women-owned enterprises and the defense sector as the first 2 places. We might have the coding done by Indians here through T-Hub in Hyderabad, which is this great startup incubator. And I hope to, by sometime next year, that we'll have an online mechanism where our companies can find each other and help each other navigate. We're seeing big companies do that really nicely together with joint partnerships. But as you said, it's the small one. It might be the small space startup that finds an American space startup that changes the face of our heavens. It might be a textile enterprise that creates a new market and creates jobs here for women and markets in the United States and vice versa. So know that it'll continue to be our focus. Our small business administrator, who's a member of the cabinet, I don't think there's an equivalent here, but that's something I know India is keenly interested in looking at. We're going to hope to have her out here in the next 12 months as well. So thank you all so much. I know we could talk for another hour. Appreciate you all. Please come to America. We'll work on the visas for all of you who are from other countries. And thank you again to Indiaspora for really being the key translator of this relationship and the inspirer of our future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Garcetti. And now dinner is on, so we'll see you soon.